The Retirement Café Podcast, episode 54, How to Age Joyfully with Maggy Pigott.
Retired or thinking about retirement? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Retirement Café Podcast. In each episode, we bring you an important conversation with insight, tips and knowledge, all designed to help you live a fulfilling and successful life in retirement. Here's your host, Chartered Financial Planner and Accredited Later Life Advisor, Justin King.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Retirement Café Podcast, which is brought to you by retirement planning specialist MFP Wealth Management. This episode is the second in our series on changing perceptions of aging, and I'm delighted to welcome Maggy Pigott, CBE, to the podcast today. Now, Maggy is relishing retirement after a distinguished 37-year career in the legal profession. She has discovered the joys of dancing, Twitter, and volunteering, including being vice chair of Open Age, a London charity that helps thousands of people over 50 lead healthy, happy, and fulfilled lives. Maggy has recently published her book, How to Age Joyfully, inspired by her experience of retirement so far. Welcome to the podcast, Maggy.
Hello, and I'm delighted to be here, Justin, to contribute to your great series on aging well.
Thank you. So, Maggy, for people who may not know you, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yes, certainly. Well, I'm now 68. That's my chronological age, but I have to say, actually, I feel about 30 years younger. I've been married for over 40 years. I've got 2 adult children, and I live in London. As you said in your introduction, in an earlier life, I qualified as a lawyer, a barrister, and then spent 37 years in the civil service, dealing with the administration of justice, and was incredibly lucky enough for 23 of those years to job share with the same person in 7 different jobs, which enabled me basically to have it all, work and life. So I've been incredibly lucky.
Wow, that's great. That sounds great. So when did you retire, and then what's that transition been like?
Well, I retired in 2011, and basically it wasn't my choice. I had fallen ill several months before that and was recommended by my medics that I really ought to give up, that my last post was really quite a challenging one. I found I wasn't really coping and it wasn't fair to my job sharer. So I did retire, and as regards the transition, well, to be honest, I found it incredibly hard. I really wasn't expecting it to be as difficult as it was. I really got quite depressed, partly because I wasn't well, but also because there's a sort of conspiracy of silence about retirement. Everybody says how wonderful it is, but I don't think people really are honest about the first moment when you retire, when you lose all your colleagues, your job, your fulfilling role, your intellectual stimulation. And it really took me about a year to adjust to being retired, and then suddenly wake up and think, well, I've got 30 years hopefully ahead of me. What am I going to do with it? It's not easy. It's a bit like having a baby, I found. Everybody tells you before you have a baby, oh, it's wonderful. And then the minute you have the baby and you talk to another new mother, they say, oh God, isn't it awful? You know, sleepless nights, you never sleep again. And I found it was slightly like that when I talked to my friends who had retired. They said, oh yes, the first year was awful, but then it's wonderful, and so it has proved.
Right. So I can just see, you've retired a year. Retirement came on suddenly. You weren't expecting it, and then you thought, right, okay, I've got this 30 years. Okay, so I mean, it kind of sounds amazing. This idea that you've got. Okay, so what am I going to do? So what did you do, and what went well, and possibly also what didn't go so well?
Well, you're quite right, actually. There was a mix. What went not so well, I think, having adjusted. When I started feeling fitter, my health is not 100% even now. So that, as with a lot of people in their 60s onwards, they have conditions that they need to cope with. So that was obviously something that you just got to get on with. What didn't go so well is my husband also had a stroke 2 years after I retired, and that was a really challenging period, but fortunately things have improved. But as regards what went well, so much more than what went badly. It's been just a wonderful time once I'd made the adjustment, time of freedom, having more control over your life, being able to look around and see where you want to go and what new things you might want to do, making new friends. In my book, I've got this wonderful quote from David Bowie, who says, aging is that extraordinary process whereby you become the person you always should have been. And I just think that's wonderful. And I think it's very true, because I've started a whole new third stage of life, which is completely different from previously.
So I understand that you discovered dancing after you retired. Now, that's something that I feel that I'm never going to discover. But anyway, how did that come about?
Well, in my attempts, once I started feeling better to try and get fitter, I discovered basically a Latin dance class at my local gym.
Wow.
And I thought I'd go along there. Not a single man, I may say, but loads of middle-aged and older women. And once I started dancing, I just loved it. I was hopeless, Justin. I can't tell you how hopeless I was. One foot, I didn't know my left from my right. But I just loved the whole thing of it, the music, the socializing. So I did that for about a bit. And then he introduced Argentine tango. And I just thought that was wonderful. So I took myself off to Argentine tango classes for 4 years, and then tried some other things, and then ended up trying ballet, which I hadn't done. I hadn't done any dance except a year in nursery school.
Wow.
And I loved that, and joined a dance company. Amazingly, they took me in, and it's called Sage, and it's a performance dance company. And so we now perform, and I'm still hopeless, but I love it. Absolutely love it.
And I presume that, obviously dancing, your fitness has probably improved dramatically as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's transformed my life. I think I can really say that in every aspect of my life, certainly in fitness, I lost weight, I changed shape, I got more flexible, my balance improved. But also mentally, it's quite challenging doing dance, especially if you're learning new steps. So it's great for the brain, I found, and the memory. In fact, there's research that shows if you do dancing regularly, about 3 times a week, and it's a form of dance where you're learning new steps, not just repeating the same thing, you reduce your risk of dementia by a staggering 76%.
Wow.
So what's not to like? I mean, hopefully it will keep me fitter mentally and physically, but also help my cognition in later life. And then, of course, there's the social aspect. I've made so many new friends. So it's been wonderful. And I totally believe that anybody and everybody can dance. You don't have to win strictly, but you can do it whether you've got Parkinson's or disability, everybody. And there's so many opportunities now locally, dance classes springing up all over the place. I don't know if you know about Silver Swans, which is ballet classes for older people, which is all over the country now.
Great.
My mantra is, you don't stop dancing because you get old because you stop dancing. And I stick to that.
Fantastic.
It's certainly been true for me.
Fantastic. Now, one of the key things that I see you'll hear coming through in lots of the conversations I have with retirees is finding a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And you've got involved in a London-based charity, Open Age.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. That sounds a little bit, again, kind of something that you found is giving you some purpose.
Absolutely. It really has. I mean, volunteering generally, and I'm a trustee on one or two other organizations. But Open Age, I found, because I was looking for activities, and I joined their dance class, and then I discovered they did other activities. So I became really a groupie, as you might say. I'd started doing Tai Chi and singing and art and Spanish, and I just thought this was the most remarkable charity. It's all about positive aging, has over 5,000 members in London, and it runs over 350 hours of activities, everything from philosophy to languages to Zumba, for a very, very wide demographic. We're just near Grenfell Tower, where we had some members in Grenfell Tower, sadly. And it was so inspiring seeing the members there who really hadn't, not a lot going for them, right, and how their lives were transformed through taking up new social, leisure, learning activities or physical activities. It was just brilliant. And so I became a trustee, and now I'm delighted, and I feel it's a real privilege that I'm now vice chair, and really think it should be a model for aging well in the future all over the place, not just in London. That's my mission anyway. Brilliant.
I know that sounds like you've really got something to go out there, and something which is really well, obviously sounds quite demanding, but also fulfilling.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, yes. I just love it. And all the people on our board and all the members are so committed and passionate about it, because it works. It just really works. It's so good for connecting people and giving them a whole new lease of life and a new purpose, as you say.
Now, somehow, amongst all this kind of dancing and charitable work and look, all these other things that occupy your time, you found the time to write a book, How to Age Joyfully, which I love the concept. Tell me more about this. Where did the idea come from? And also, you know, that you in there, you write about 8 steps. Maybe you could share those with the audience.
Yeah, of course. Well, it came from what we've just been discussing, from the fact that I felt so much better when I started dancing, and I saw what Open Age were doing, and I started thinking, well, you know, I really feel great about aging now, and it's such a positive time of life. But I also saw such a negative picture portrayed about aging, so many negative stereotypes, and this so-called narrative of decline that you read about so often. And I wanted to do something about that. So I started this Twitter account called Age Joyfully at Aging Better, with a blue chicken. Do follow me. Yeah. And I thought, well, I'll aim for 100 followers, and I'll just be positive about aging and give information, advice, etc. And I've just got now just over 7,000 followers, and I was just staggered by this. And I thought, well, there's a real gap here. But then I was told that an awful lot of older people don't like Twitter, don't want to be on it. So it was suggested that perhaps I might like to write a book. And I researched it a bit and thought, well, there was rather a gap in the market for an uplifting, practical, accessible book on how to age well. And also, at the same time, if I did that, because I'm donating 50% of my royalties to Open Age, I could help them at the same time. So it really seemed a win-win. I never thought I'd get a publisher, but fortunately, I was just thrilled that I was offered a deal by the first publisher I went to. And so I produced this book, and it was really based on the research I'd done, on what I'd learned through Twitter and my personal experience, on what the Centre for Aging Better has shown, and the blue zones where people live the longest. And it came down really in my mind to 8 steps, and I can, if you want, very briefly just run through them. Yes, please. Well, the first 4 I think are the most important, probably, and the ones that the Centre for Aging Better and the blue zones really hone in on. And I think the most important of all is probably the first step, which is move, and that's physical activity, the miracle cure, as the NHS calls it. And I think that is just vital. We we don't move enough, we sit too much. We need to just have a bit more activity in our lives. The second is eating right, a healthy diet, and being very moderate in your consumption, because we have a real problem with obesity. The third is, we've already touched on, is having a purpose in your life. The Japanese call it ikigai, a reason for being. The fourth is connection, which is absolutely vital. Loneliness is as bad for you as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So connecting and having good relationships, social relationships, is vital. And then the fifth is lifelong learning, what I call grow, keeping your mind active, because use it or lose it is important for your mind as well as your body. The sixth is gratitude, practicing gratitude, which has apparently been shown to be incredibly good for you, and you can learn how to do it. The seventh is giving both to others and to yourself, of your time, your money, your possessions, even your skills, your experience. And then the final one, which I think is also vital, is having a positive attitude to life, being positive about aging and what's to come. And again, research has shown that those people who have this positive attitude basically live an extra 7.5 years. So there's a real benefit. And in the book, I have 150 practical tips on how to achieve each of these 8 steps, which I think are so important.
Wow. Yeah,
and lots of quotes too. I have 170 quotes, like the David Bowie one. Great.
Well, I think it should be on everyone's retirement present list.
Absolutely. When anybody takes out a pension, they should get a free copy of my book.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is the last step there of think positive. And I actually think, that there's an element of me which thinks, well, it's a bit like, it's very difficult, if you sell someone who's depressed to pull themselves together, it's probably the wrong question, wrong statement.
Absolutely.
But all the previous 7 steps, I think if you adopt all those previous 7 steps, and that you would end up with a positive attitude.
Well, yes,
it's kind of the end result. It's like, how could you not be if you're
doing all that?
If you're doing all of that, if you're part of communities and you're doing some fulfilled work and you're moving around and you're exercising and you're learning new things and all that type of thing. Well, I think you're going to you're going to feel pretty positive about life and think this is it's not such a bad time, retirement.
Well, funny you should say that in the book I do say, and if you do all the other 7 steps, this is one tip on how you will get to be more positive. I have about 20 others, but you're so right that I think if you do all those things, that all the steps actually interconnect. If you connect with other people, you'll probably learn something. It's a whole holistic type package, actually. But yes, obviously there are people who have mental health issues, and I've been there, done that, and yes, you need help. Not everybody is lucky enough to be able to be positive all the time, but I think that there is an awful lot that in those other steps, which, as you say, can help you.
Yeah. And I'm thinking also on a wider audience that, I mean, yes, we're talking about retirees and we're talking about, your retired stage of life, but actually all of those steps sound absolutely wonderful for any stage of your life. And if you adopt all those things, then, it doesn't have to be, just when you're retired. It can be when you're 20s, the 30s, et cetera.
Yes.
Throughout life.
Yes, absolutely. I think the steps apply whether you're 20 or 90. And indeed, my daughter read it and said, oh, this is really inspiring. And all her friends are now buying it and reading it.
Great.
Because they do. Every single one of them applies equally at whatever age. And if you start younger, that's even better, because really they're saying now that certainly with physical fitness, you should start in midlife if you want to have a healthy later life.
Yes. And of course, I suppose that if you do start earlier, then when, the end of work does become realistic, whether you've reached financial independence or you're actually asked to finish work because maybe that your health is not so good any longer, that the transition would not be so great, because actually if you're already a member of the dance class or the bowls club or the what have you just say, well, actually now I've got more time to pursue those things that I was already enjoying.
Yes, absolutely. That's so true. You've got those other links to other activities. You don't have to start from scratch, and your whole identity is not wrapped up in your work and your career, which I think can be very difficult if that's so.
Yeah. Well, Maggie, it's been absolutely fascinating chatting to you. And well, I really appreciate your time. But before we go, could you maybe explain to listeners how they could find out more about you, the book, and the work that you do at Open Age?
Yes, certainly. Well, the book is available online from various places, obviously Amazon, but other online sellers, and it's should be in all good bookshops. It's or you go in and order it, Waterstones and all other bookshops. So it's available. If you Google it, it comes up. Twitter, my Twitter handle is Age Joyfully @AgingBetter, and please do follow for more tips and more positive comments on aging positively. And Open Age, their website is www.openage.org.uk, and you can find out more about that. But sadly, at the moment, it's only in London, but we're hoping to rectify that in the future.
Great. Well, that's fantastic. So, as Maggie's just said, if you'd like to find out more about Maggie and her book and what she's up to on Twitter and the charity Open Age, we'll put all those links in the show notes on our website at theretirementcafe.co.uk. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, please do leave a review on iTunes to help more people like you to discover us. It really does help. You can also subscribe via iTunes or on your preferred podcast player so you never miss an episode. Next week is 1 year since the launch of the Retirement Café podcast. So I will be reflecting on the conversations I've had and the lessons I've learned from interviewing some fascinating people over the past 12 months. We will continue this series on changing perceptions about aging in December. As always, please email me with any feedback on hello@theretirementcafe.co.uk. So until next time, this is Justin King helping you feel more informed in your retirement.
Thank you for listening to the Retirement Café podcast with Justin King. To find out more, you can find us online at theretirementcafe.co.uk.